That's a great intro to everything. So, welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Developer Weekly, episode 4. Four. When we are in 400 or 500. I think it was actually Hanselman who had a Azure Friday 500 session. And you're like, well, that means, holy moly, he's been doing that for a year. So there's quite a long time to go to that level.
Wait, what? He had 400 in a year doing a weekly Azure show?
Well, I think it was 500th episode. He didn't say when he started, but you can calculate that if it's a Friday show.
Azure is not that old, is it?
I don't know. Anyway.
It goes back to the Silverlight days. We at least know that.
That's true. That's
yes.
true. That's where it all started. Hosting Silverlight. No, never. Okay, so this time, this was the episode 4. We have a visitor. We promised to have visitors in this. So we have the SharePoint developer, the man, the myth in place, which is not, by the way, Erwin. It is
Mr. Andrew Connell.
I'm thrilled to join you guys. I got to replace Erwin, right? So I'm no longer Erwin.
Well, wow. And to be fair, we need to get Erwin on a room as well. So Erwin is absolutely virtually in place. And I need to have somebody watching my back when I'm writing. So somebody who knows actually their stuff when I'm writing code or anything. So it's good to have somebody there. Now, let me get, that's pretty annoying. Somebody watching your back. Now, okay, so we have AC in the room, and by an accident, we're both wearing your shirt, your SharePoint shirt. AC has a slightly different one, but anyway, that's
I have
official.
the vintage.
That's true. That is true. Now, before we go to the weekly big discussion of things, so let's start with our visitors. So, AC, what have you been doing on this week related on hopefully in SharePoint development? Well, anything else is fine as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, on SharePoint development, I guess we'll talk a little bit about it, but I spent a lot of time with Ingo elements and SharePoint framework and figuring out what I think is the best option for using it and what the drawbacks are and limitations and everything. A lot on that. And, that's basically it on the SharePoint framework side.
Yeah. And obviously you're maintaining your training packages and all of that. Well, why did I do quotes training?
I have no idea. Yes.
Yeah, so I have a SharePoint framework developer course that I do. And actually, so what I've been doing since your last show is I was in Norway teaching a class to a bunch of people over in Norway, in Stavanger, Norway, which is a beautiful area. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I live SharePoint framework. That's my day-to-day job right these days.
Yep. And that works for us absolutely well. So, and every single number is skyrocketing. So it's just, it's insane. Which is a win for you as well. So, Waldek, you've been working on a CLI version at least.
Yeah, so I've actually done a few things. So it's been in works for a while now, and actually just today when we recorded, like an hour back, we shipped it. So me and Erwin wrote a book, an ebook on SPFX for admins. Because if you think about it, in PMP, we do a lot of stuff. We put a lot of info out there, but it's primarily for devs. And what I've seen when I talk to folks is that admins don't really have that much material to lean on with regards to what is SPFX, what do they have to take into account before they run SPFX in production. So Erwin and I thought it would be a good thing for us to share our experience with that and help them just understand better what they deal with when they put SPFX packages in production. So that is one. So that is available now. And I guess we'll have the link to that available in the show notes, right?
Is it? Yeah, absolutely. We'll get a link on that. Is it terrifying story or is it a kind of what kind of story is it? It's like, oh my God.
Well, I mean, the thing is that it's not different than anything else that you run in SharePoint. You put custom code in your environment next to your confidential info and data, so you have to take into account that is sound. You cannot just blindly trust that everything you put there is safe because there are 2 million folks running that. That doesn't work, right? Yeah,
every single piece of code which you take randomly from internet, you can't just plug it in and just start using.
Yeah.
Absolutely. See, I like to use that as the whole, the joke on, they say IT pro jobs are going away because everything's moving to the cloud. So us developers, we're trying to give them more job security. So hey, you need to deploy our solution packages.
Yes.
Learn some JavaScript, man. What does it mean with a CDN?
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to help them.
Yeah, and there's like 650 or maybe by now 700,000 packages on NPM. There are many things you can find in there, right?
Yeah. Fortunately. Yes.
Yeah. And then another thing that I've done is a quick fix. So at Rancor a while back, we've built an extension for VS Code that you can use to easily deploy your SPPKG directly from VS Code to your tenant. And originally we would support only the tenant app catalog, and recently we added support for the site collection one. So that is available now too. And then probably the biggest amount of work that I've done over the last few days is new release of the Office 365 CLI. Somehow we got like 10 PRs at a time, and they weren't small. They're like new commands, updates. So I spent a lot of time going through that. So we have probably one of the biggest beta releases so far. Yeah. And that also includes the ability to upgrade your SharePoint framework projects from version 1.5.1 to 1.6, which was released just yesterday. And that's really, really cool because, well, I mean, it took us only like a few hours. Like, dude, like, the package is still warm. Finally.
No. I'm saying finally.
Oh, you mean the 1.6 was sure. Oh, yeah.
If you remember the recording. Still running. Yeah, still running?
Yeah. The week ago when we recorded episode 3, we thought that we were shipping that on Thursday evening, and we were celebrating already that when we were watching this video, it's out, and then no.
And you didn't. Yeah.
So that's on us. There was a small, it's a small thing, which was a server-side patch, which we wanted to get deployed worldwide. And unfortunately, it wasn't deployed on time on Thursday, so we needed to delay. And that was a Memorial Weekend, or what weekend?
Yeah.
AC?
Labor Day.
So we needed to, Labor Day, absolutely. Yes. So we needed to, that's the long story short. So, and all the marketing people were not happy about that statement, by the way, I have to say. Thank you, marketing people. I acknowledged I shouldn't be promising something which isn't happening. So.
Oh, no, I mean, there was caveat. You said that it might not happen. There's still a chance. So, yeah. Fair point. Anyway, so SPFX 1.6 is out. That is on you guys. The new version of CLI with the ability to upgrade to 1.6 is out as well. And the cool thing that we added here is that if you look at the things that change when you want to upgrade the project that you had built on 1.5.1 to 1.6, there are some things that change in project, but there are also some things that changed in code as well. And the cool thing is that CLI detects those too, and you will get them within the report that you will get. You will find those changes as well. So we hope that will help you get over from 1.5.1 to 1.6 more easily with fewer pains and headaches. And if there is anything to reach out, if there is anything that we can improve, to reach out. So
we should test those steps with a SharePoint Starter Kit because we need to get that one upgraded on 1.6. Ta-da.
And there are a lot of things in there. So perfect.
I'm planning not hearing this. This is great. I noticed that this morning. I can't wait to go through. I've got a whole. Yeah, I've got my entire my download of all the projects I have in my course. So I've got to run through all those 1.5.1s. Update them all to 1.6, so it'll be fun to update those. And I'm also glad that I guess the other thing I was working on, Vesa, I didn't mention, was I'm updating the ALM commands that we have in the Office CLI to support not just tenant app catalog, but site collection app catalog. So Waldek, I know I'm late submitting that PR, but because you had so many other PRs, I decided to hold off on it.
Because otherwise we wouldn't still ship, so thanks, AC.
I'm kidding. I'm actually having trouble with it. I'll get it to you. I'm working on it. This won't take long.
Shouldn't take long, yeah.
Cool.
That's how you.
Yeah, so obviously on our side, the 1.6 was the big thing, and making that one out and doing documentation updates on that one, the video tutorial updates. There's a new version of the web part tutorials already out, and extension tutorials are in progress. Kind of related on this one, there's a upcoming cool training package also coming from AC at some point, related on SharePoint Framework whenever he has time to actually deliver that for us. But there's a lot of training material coming, and the existing tutorials are in written format, updated already. So good stuff. And then I did a whatever random Monday thing. I pushed out to SharePoint Online PowerShell commandlets to the PowerShell gallery. So long-lasting ask for a year.
Exactly.
Precisely, but
why wasn't it there?
Sooner or later, well, it's a one step forward, so better later than never, right?
Right.
So Okay, so we have quite a few items to go through today, it would be it's really nice to talk even more, but let me share my screen and hopefully we get all of this stuff recorded properly. So first of all, let's get started. You guys can see what I'm sharing. So
yes,
that means
it's working.
Recording
and we are still in a call.
Excellent. So first of all, if you go to the developer blog of SharePoint developer blog, there's links in the notes. You can find the latest guidance on SharePoint development. Obviously, all of the Dev Weekly shows, everything else, notes and everything else is here as well. See some releases, but the latest one being the release of SharePoint Framework 1.6. Now, in here, then this contains pretty much what we went through actually on the previous episode, which I got some feedback, so probably should not have done that, but that's fine. These things do happen. We learn from our mistakes, right? So, but this is containing then the guidance on what's included, how to get started. We referenced the documentation which is out, as for example for dynamite deployment. That documentation is out in the official SharePoint Dev Doc. So, hopefully you'll find this useful. If I'm missing something, please let us know. We're trying to address documentation gaps as fast as possible. There's a small, itsy-bitsy timing and challenge and resourcing issues and all of this stuff, but we'll get there. So keep the feedback coming. Now, that was about the 1.6. So a few kind of runtime topics before we go to the community thing. So one thing what I wanted to kind of promote is Jeremy's and Paul's, the Microsoft 365 developer podcast, and really great stuff. So this is coming out, I think, on a weekly basis, isn't it, roughly?
Yes,
yeah, I think so.
August 31, August 24, yes. You can see
24, 31, so it should be actually coming out today, if I'm not mistaken, or 10 tomorrow. But good stuff from Jeremy and Paul, and they keep on doing this on a weekly basis. So our SharePoint Dev Weekly is a video blog, but their stuff is a podcast, and it is across everything in Microsoft 365.
You want to hear a funny fact about this podcast?
Sure.
So Paul has actually been on my podcast more than he's been on this podcast.
So he was there only once because he was twice on yours, right?
Oh, he's been on there more than that. He's been on multiple times. Oh yeah. So I had to make sure, like, he's made cameos and everything, but I had to call that out just while it's still true. So.
Fair point. Now, a few other things what we wanted to kind of promote beforehand. So Ignite is coming. If you're coming to Ignite, there was a delay, and this unfortunate delay of getting anything around Office Dev and SharePoint Dev out in the session catalogs, and people started to freak out on the dev side track. So the SharePoint sessions were out, but there was nothing on the SharePoint Dev track. The sessions got slightly delayed on getting to the catalog. So we still have, so the updated sessions are, we have a SharePoint framework, what's new and what's next, with Pat and Luca. So, and 75 minutes, good session to stay up to date on what's happening. We have our open source projects BMP session. We will actually have pretty cool announcements here as well. First time demos, certain things, and good setup. And I was lazy, so I asked Paolo and Elio to join me, so I don't have to do any demos. That's delegation, right? Probably I'll do some demos as well. But Elio has been doing a great job on the reusable control stuff, and there's more stuff on that side. And Paolo is working on something super cool, which will be announced definitely latest in Ignite. Now, a few other topics, just to pinpoint, we have a separate session on the OneDrive and SharePoint graph, so basically accessing files and sharing of those files in OneDrive and graph with Darren and Jeremy Kelly. So, for example, Pat is reporting to Darren, so Darren is pretty high in the food chain and designing these things. And obviously, Jeremy and Gina has their own Microsoft Graph API session, so really good stuff, and 75-minute session as well. So join on these if you're coming to Ignite. If you're not coming to Ignite, the recordings will be available typically within a day or two. So that should be pretty easily doable.
Really cool. Yeah.
Cool. Now on other topics. So you mentioned Waldek this one already. So there's a new version of Rancor deploy SPFX package. And this is really around the fact that if you right click the SPPKG file, you're able to then do operations for that one. So you don't have to drag and drop the file in. It actually does that.
Yeah, and click or command lines, PowerShell or CLI. You can just click it.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. And neat small set of things. Absolutely. And the one thing what you need to remember that you're setting the URL properly, because otherwise it's going to not aware where it's going to deploy that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we go only that far trying to detect who you are and what you do. It's like,
well, you got to help artificial intelligence. Okay, never mind.
It's coming. It's coming.
The other thing, what you mentioned related on the work, what you've done, you and Erwin. So I'm a pretty small picture now on the recording, but Erwin is my back. And this is around the security. Well, what does the SharePoint framework actually mean for administrators? And it is a really good article explaining and a story explaining the governance advantages what the SharePoint framework does, comparing on the, let's say, random script editor web parts and content editor web parts, which are basically rogue ways of embedding script on your sites, which can have a catastrophic impact. So, really cool stuff as well. Now, moving on AC's article. Anyway, we would have been covering this one, even though AC would not be our visitor, because this is a really great series. So how long have you been working with the Angular Element stuff, AC? Just out of curiosity. Well, I know, but...
yeah, I guess I've been working on and off with Google on this for, maybe a year and a half now. Yeah. But it wasn't really a viable option until May of this year when Angular 6 came out. So technically we could do it with Angular 5. But Angular 6 is when we really could start doing it. And what I wanted to do was the challenge that we have is that it's not a native thing that you can do inside of SharePoint framework. And so there's two ways you can implement this. One is in one giant project, basically use SharePoint framework, put everything in there, put all the Angular stuff in there, make it work. Or two separate projects, one just an Angular project, one a SharePoint framework project that consumes what Angular outputs. And I wanted to show the differences between them. The story, I think, is pretty good today. But it's going to get a hell of a lot better too, in later this month or next month in October.
No cursing. Oh. Family show.
Family show. I'm not sure what I said.
I don't know what I said. Like, what? What did I say?
I'm going to add a beep on top of that, so I'm going to get the timings right. So.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So it's stuff should get better with this, with a new rendering engine coming out for Angular. It's going to make things even smaller. So we'll see how that comes into play. But I like this approach because it really makes Angular development feel more like you're doing stuff like we do with React, where it's like more component style development.
Yeah. And basically, the two big differences is that one big project, like I said, the size, the bundle size, the download size of that one is relatively big. And that's really the challenge of using the Angular elements. And then the two project means that the Angular is a separate project. So you can minimize everything inside of it. You can use the Webpack 4 and all of the goodies. And in future, it's going to be even smaller because Google guys are optimizing that even further. And then you reference that bundle in your web part to make everything nicely together. Now, we've been having every now and then meetings with Google. Yes, we do actually, even though we're Microsoft. So for making sure that we get the Angular element story in, this is helping on the intent story. We're looking into also having a open source extension support for this one. Let's say most likely it's first the one big project approach, and then we need to figure out how do we extend or tell the story of two different projects together.
I have an idea. How about we introduce in SPFX the idea of SLN, solution file? Joking. Don't. So you're going to have two projects as a single. No.
Well, no, you say that. I mean, there is actually not a solution file, but with the new support that we have in TypeScript and everything, it is. We can make VS Code work better with two separate projects. So it is possible, and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. But one step at a time, obviously, and I think we need to see the demand first with a open source Angular elements, and if community says we want to do this, well, absolutely, we'll keep on investing on add more time and resources on that. But this is a great start of explaining what is the options right now, and also it's also always the promise of the future. Wait. 6 months more, this is going to be brilliant. And after 6 months, wait, 6 months more, this is going to be even further brilliant. So we'll see.
Welcome to tech.
We'll end up. Exactly. But great article and definitely worth of checking. Now, a few kind of I wouldn't say, let's say, the business-driven articles, but this is really good of John Klein around 10 reasons why the SharePoint Modern Library experience is better. For us in the SharePoint engineering office, we're investing heavily on the modern experiences, and we want people to start using them. And we're trying to start, we are addressing the gaps as we move along. It is a long journey, obviously. Everybody should understand that, because we started the journey of, SharePoint, the old SharePoint has existed for a decade? And then we start modernizing the old SharePoint. So it does take a while to actually modernize every single bits and bits. So, but more and more we're seeing people moving to the modern experiences, because you can do cool stuff and it's natively responsive, and there's a lot of benefits on doing that. And you'll see more news on that in Ignite. There's quite a few sessions on Ignite on the modern experiences. Now, the second article which I wanted to call out is from Bob Sherman around the branding of SharePoint. This is a really good one, explaining what it was and how did we use the purposing side, and what's also the current situation with the modern experiences. So what is what you can do, and what's the possibilities with the application customizers and hub sites and hub navigation and everything else. The situation is obviously moving all the time, so we're adding additional capabilities. Now that Bob is back in Microsoft, he's getting also early access on things, so he's up to date on actually what's happening. Now, moving on the journey, so there's a Robert Schauhen article around SharePoint PnP Starter Kit. So this is a people directory contribution. So this is actually a PR which is still pending on GitHub, but it's a good example of how the community is actually now helping us with the SharePoint Starter Kit, which is basically showing what's possible with modern experiences. So it has multiple site collections, footers, headers, 15 web parts. It actually has 9 Microsoft Graph web parts, roughly. So that's nicely showing what you can do with Microsoft Graph as an example. So referencing that one, kind of related, I pronounce it Bo. Come on,
Bo.
No.
You can call me Vesa, Amex, whatever, it doesn't matter. Paul Cameron's MasterCard, yes. Paul Cameron's blog post, and this is related on SharePoint Starter Kit as well. Definitely, if you haven't checked it out, have a look on it. It is a great solution for showing how things are working. This really concentrates on the collab footer. So there's a footer which is getting embedded on the collab sites, which are getting created in the using the site designs and site scripts. So it is a really nice functionality as well. And using the tenant-wide deployment, you could actually really easily say cross the tenant. It doesn't matter who creates what sites where. We'll always embed this footer inside of your tenant. So we'll do all of those adjustments in the starter kit sooner or later. Now, a few more things before we close up. Updating SharePoint Online user profile properties with SharePoint Framework. Kind of an interesting article from Hubfly guys, and relatively typical story as well. Especially if you come from a, let's say, classic SharePoint background. But there isn't really another easy way to do personalization than taking advantage of the SharePoint Online user profile. It's basically if you want to have a editing experience in a web part and store the filter what the end user selects in a permanent way, not just as a cookie or a session, using user profile could be the option. I don't think Azure or Microsoft Graph has an option to do that, right?
Well, depending
behind
what
of the user.
So I know, for example, if that was related to, let's say, email, you could use the extensions and to store additional email, but that would be attached to an email. So I don't think that you can store extensions attached to a user.
So it's just a pity from a SharePoint perspective that we don't have an API to create a custom user profile properties, because that would then help all of this to happen. Because if you use these properties, you need to manually create the user profile property in the tenant admin to take advantage of that, which is a pity. Now, and a final thing which is actually really cool from a technology perspective is from Russell, and this is on calling on-premises services and surfacing business data in SharePoint Online using SharePoint Framework using the Azure Service Bus Relay. Now, This is a classic technical scenario, which absolutely is possible to do. Now, the downside of doing this in the way that is actually shown here by Russell, it's technology perspective absolutely fine. But now you have a dependency on network latency. So because your calls from your web part go to the Azure, and then they call on-prem. And what if the on-prem is down? You're kind of you have a problem. So when I used to be working with Field, my personally, when I was a principal consultant in MCS, so we used to actually recommend that you wouldn't call back to on-prem. You would rather replicate the needed data to cloud from on-prem, like, for example, even in every single 5 seconds or 10 seconds, doesn't matter, and then you expose the needed data from cloud. Because then you're talking cloud to cloud, from SharePoint Online to Azure rather than from SharePoint Online, Azure on-prem, and that's a pretty big pipeline. So, me talking a lot. Makes sense?
It's a cool tech. I mean, it's cool to see that someone's showing how to actually go about doing this if you wanted to do it, because I can understand, like you said, for performance reasons and reliability, yes, replicating it to the cloud so that you're all in the Microsoft backbone makes a lot of sense. But for those customers where your data cannot leave on-prem for some reason, whatever it may be, that, it's a cool option to be able to show this. Just make sure if you're doing this, like you were saying, Vesa, you need to have some good, loading experience and, fallback in case things don't work after a certain amount of time. So people don't think that the web part is broken, that it's just, hey, I'm having trouble connecting back to the back end.
Yep, absolutely. Because the on-premises maintenance breaks will then impact your service and SharePoint Online, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Again, depending on the time, depending on the requirements, depending on everything. So it's not a black and white decision. It's good or bad thing. Technology-wise, this is a great demo. This could be a session in any seminar, somebody showing cool stuff using cloud. So cool stuff. Now, I think that's it for the items. If you're watching this and your item wasn't mentioned, please use what was it? SB Dev Weekly.
Yes.
In the Twitter, or let us know using whatever alternative means. So we actually cover your blog posts and articles or sample in these sessions. Now I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully we'll get a full screen video back because
we're still there.
And we're still here. And Erwin is still here as well. So
yes,
he's watching our back. So.
Need that. Definitely need that.
But I think, yes, we started in episode 1 being like 20 minutes, then it's been growing, and I think we just broke 30 minutes. Unfortunately, that's what you get when you get the AC on the call, right?
Don't blame it on the guest. Don't never blame it on the guest. Like rule number 1.
That's easy. Blame it on the guest because I'm out of here next time, right?
On that bomb show. Good night.
Now let's see if you stay under 30 minutes next time.
You want to bet?
Cool. I think that's it for this one. So this one was recorded, like mentioned, on Thursday, 6th of September, and this will go live on 10th of September. So you'll see the social media announcements and blog posts. But thank you everybody for watching. Please give us feedback. Give us feedback from a SharePoint engineering perspective. Give us feedback on the blog post what we're providing. Give us feedback on the open source stuff what we do. If we are doing good stuff, thumbs up. If we're doing something where you want to contribute or we should be improving, just let us know.
Thumbs up.
But I think that's it. Thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you, guys. We'll come up with another one in a week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Have you guys.